In this video, I'm going to show how to create a chart and set up your screens in the Call of Basic Astrology software. So to create a chart, go over to File, click on New Birth Chart. And this is going to get your birth data screen. So you start by typing your name in there. Then if it's the first time that you used Kala, you can choose the month, day, year option, or if you're in Europe, you can choose the day, month, year option. And once you choose that, that's going to be the default. I'm going to leave it set to the month, day, year option. Okay? And let's say we want to calculate a chart for June 1st, 2000. We just type that in. And you can see I can just put spaces between the 6, the 1, and the 2000. Or I can put pretty much anything I want. I can put spaces, colons, semicolons, periods, you name it. It'll accept all of them. For me, I just put spaces because that's the easiest. Same for the time. So I want to put 10:55. Just type it in. Then you select your gender. It is important to select your gender for the compatibility screen, so do try to remember to set that. Then you've got a country, and at this point you start using the atlas. There's every country in the world is here. You should be able to find anything you need. So you can change the country. Say I want to do Germany. Now I'm going to be set to Germany. Okay, or you can just select something like Honduras, so you can select it as well. Then when we type in the city, this is the important part. Just start by typing the city. I don't know any cities in Honduras, so I'm going to go back to the USA again, okay? And I'm going to select, say, Chicago. And you'll see all these Chicagos start coming up. Once they come up, you can start looking for them and just click on them. Or you can just click and say, I know I want Chicago, Illinois. I can just put the IL, and I'll start getting the Chicago, Illinois. So when we click on that, we can't just leave it there. We have to click on it, because that sets your latitude, longitude, time zone, and DST. So don't just type the city in. Always click on it when it comes up in this drop-down box. Okay? At that point, your atlas is set, and you're going to have the right time zone and the right DST selected. If you don't click on it, it's not going to do that, and you'll calculate the chart out wrong. Then there's the Namaskar, which is simply the letter, the sound of the first letter of the person's name. So say I wanted to pick someone named John. I would want to click on the Ja for Ja sound. Now, you don't need to put the Namaskar. That's only used in one calculation in the software. It's used in the Shayanadi Avashtas. If you're not using the Shayanadi Avashtas, you can ignore that. But if you ever go to use them, you'll have to add that. That's what that's about. Then we've got the place of residence. If you select the place of residence, then when it calculates things like transits or when it calculates out the cards of TrueScreen, it's going to use that place of residence. So, again, a good thing to do. Say I want to say Four Corners is where they live in Arkansas. So I'll click that on residence. But you don't have to do the residence, but be aware that that sets the default for that chart to calculate transits and using the card screen. So it's worth taking a moment to do that. Then we calculate the chart, and we get the chart coming up. Now I want to show one thing just to make sure. This is where people sometimes make mistakes, so I want to show it. Say I want to go to New Birth Chart, and I'm going to calculate a chart for Washington, D.C. Say I'll call this Sam. And the atlas is already defaulted to Washington, D.C. because that's my default place, which you can select, but that happens to be the default place right now. I'm going to calculate a chart for Washington, D.C. So the latitude, longitude, time zone is already set. But let's say I want to calculate a place for D.C. in June. So I want to go June 1st, 2015. And I want to calculate it for 1 o'clock, so 1300. I can't just click calculate. In fact, if I try to click calculate, it'll warn me, do you want to keep the current time zone in DST? The reason it's warning me because I didn't click on the city. In June, I have to have DST. So I'm going to say, no, I don't want to keep that. Since I changed the date, anytime you change the date, always type your city in again. So I put in Washington, D.C., and now I click on it, and now it calculates the DST. If you don't do that, it's going to give the DST for the date that today, whatever the day is when you enter the chart, not this new date. So anytime you change this to a new date, even if you're going to use the default city that's already in there, make sure you type the default city in and click on it in order to set the atlas. Okay? Alright, and then it won't warn you. Once you click on the city, it's not going to warn you for that atlas. If you get that atlas warning, click on No and click on the city. Okay? Alright, so once we have our chart, this is the main screen, which it automatically opens up to. You can start setting the things up on this chart that you want. And you do that by simply right-clicking on a square and pulling up any chart, any type of thing. Say I want to show a Shadbala graph. I can select that there. Say I want the Navamsha, I can select that. Say I want the Bhava Chalita chart, I can click that. So you can customize and set up this screen by right-clicking on a square and selecting a box. You can also change it anytime you want. So most people set this up kind of the way they like to have it. Then if I click on the big chart, I can also pull up a floating window anytime I want and move it around. It's not going to get stuck anywhere. It's just right there. Okay? Now some windows have buttons. They're interactive, like transits. It's an interactive window. If I click in the center of it, I can set the dates for the transit. Any window with a button in the middle of it is interactive. So on the Companius chart, which is the Bhava Chalita chart, if I click on that, it'll pull up the house cusps for me. But if I pull up the Bhava Chalita chart to a floating window, it doesn't have a button. See the difference? This is not a button. This is like a 3D looking button. Same with the charts. I pull up the Navamsha. I can click on the button and get the Navamsha dignities and their lords and their Upashtas. But if I have a floating Navamsha up, it's no longer a button. It's not going to pull it up because these floaters are not active windows. I can't make them pull up anything else. Okay? So be aware that if you want to use a button on a screen, you got to pull it to a fixed screen. I've also got things like a Pada's table. Or that's not what the one I want. A Pada's chart. Let's see. A Pada's table. Actually, let's pull this one up. I can pull this up for different Vargas. If I click on the top, I can pull it up for any Varga I want. But only if it's a fixed window. If it's a floating window, this top heading won't be active. And in Kala, any table with a yellow bar on top, that heading, if you click on it, something interactive will happen. So that's the basics of setting up your main screen. You've got 4 main screens. You know, some of mine are already set up here. Some of them are still blank that you can set up any way you want. Okay. In addition to that, you have several other screens, and you've also got some screens under the transits menu. Now, depending on what you're doing, you may, whenever you calculate a new chart, you may want it to go to a particular screen. So to do that, if you go to your options and click on your chart screen options, you can select the default open screen. Say you like to use Gemini. You might want to keep it so it opens to the Gemini screen right away. So any screen that's in Kala, you can have it automatically open to that screen to start with. Okay? Then on this chart screen options, there's a lot of other things you can select. You can select the North Indian, South Indian, or round wheel. You also can select that by pushing the F2 key. You can show special lagnas in the Vargas. You can put asteroids if you want. You can display the outer planets. You can have the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the charts. You also can do that with the F8 key. You can show the names of the Rashis in the South Indian chart, like Capricorn, Aquarius, or you can make those go away and just have empty boxes. You can show house numbers in the South Indian chart, so you can actually have the house numbers there from the Lagna. If you want, you can show 2 dashas on the main screen. So now I've got 2 dashas on the main screen. Okay. Let's see. You can show, so those are your basic things. The rest of these apply to other things. So basically, use this to set your screen up the way you want to. You also can go over to fonts or options and hit font options. And there you can set your font sizes, the type of font you want to use, or you can click on the use Kala glyphs to show the planetary symbols and the symbols of the Rashis rather than using numbers and letters for those things. So a pretty simple thing to do. One last thing about calculating a chart that I want to mention is if you're going to calculate BC dates. One of the nice things about Kala is you can actually calculate charts all the way back to 5,400 BC, which is further than anything else out there. You also can calculate charts up to 5,480. So you've got a 10,800 year range for calculating charts. And it's accurate. Other softwares, when you start calculating even 500, 1,000 years back, you start losing accuracy. And so with the Kala software, you don't, because we use the Swiss ephemeris, which is a really great calculation engine that's by far the most accurate thing out there. And any software that's been developed since the Swiss ephemeris was made uses the Swiss ephemeris, because it's stupid to use anything else. But a lot of softwares were developed before the Swiss ephemeris was available, and so they just don't calculate things that accurately if you're far away from modern days. If you go 500 years before, forward, or if you calculate even 200 years back, a lot of those other softwares start losing accuracy. So if you're a researcher or you like to look at historical figures and you want to calculate a BC date, there's something you have to know about doing that. So again, go to File, New, set your name. Say you want to just say, Henry, whatever, some historical figure. Now BC dates are negative numbers, okay, because they're before, we started our timeline, our current modern timeline. So you need to number it right. Say you want to calculate a chart for 4 BC. You can't put, you might say you want to do December 25th, Christmas on 4 BC. You're going to instinctively want to go -4 for the year. But that's not going to be right, because the way, what 4 BC means, you had you had year 1. And then the year before that was year BC1. And then the year before that was BC2, and so on. Okay? But astronomically, that's not how it works. With the ephemerises, the way it works is you had year 1. Previous to year 1, you had year 0. And after year 0, or before year 0, you had year -1, then year -2. So there's a 0 in there. Whereas with BC, they don't count as 0. So if you say take 1 BC, it's actually astronomical year 0, and you'd have to put a 0 in. So 0 is 1 BC. -1 is 2 BC. -2 is 3 BC. -3 is 4 BC. So I want to calculate a chart for December 25th, 4 BC. I have to do December 25th -3 BC, or -3, which equals 4 BC. So always give it a minus with one less digit to the BC number. So a 10 becomes a 9. A 250 becomes a 249 BC, okay? Or -249. That's explained in the owner's manual as well. If you go to Tools and you click on, go to Help, of course, and Owner's Manual, you'll get an owner's manual up that will show you all this stuff. Now, if you're running your Kala on a Mac with the Mac simulator, or with Crossover or something like that, you can't pull up the owner's manual. In that case, just email us for it, and we'll email it to you. Okay? Email you a copy of that you can just have on your computer. Okay, thank you.